Hey, everybody. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're watching from. It is another Resi Live.
Yes, it is.
I am excited to be here with Mr. Daniel Larson once again.
Hey, what's up, friends?
And today we have a very special guest from Daniel's past and
Yes.
former boss, I hear.
Yes.
We got to be careful, Daniel. No, it's we've got we're really blessed. We a lot of times on Tuesdays we've said we just want to have kind of have this be a casual time, casual conversation. Of course, our podcast that we release, we do more polishing, more editing,
That's
more
right. Way to plug
meme
the podcast,
insertion,
buddy.
Coffee and Gaff Tape
Way
episode
to plug it.
5 out now with. I can't even remember who our
I think episode 7 is going to drop.
7.
Episode
Oh
7 is going
goodness.
to drop on the 17th.
Oh my goodness.
But anyways, that is neither
growing
here
up.
nor there. Mr. Tommy Bowman
Yes, Mr.
from Mission
Tommy
Church,
Bowman.
co-founding pastor and executive pastor. My dear friend.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, buddy?
And former boss. I used to sign
Former
your
boss.
paychecks.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
You don't have to be You don't have to be nice or kind anymore,
Dude, I can't help it. You're just such a genuine guy.
Yeah, great to be with you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for having me.
Yeah, Tommy, I was just saying, so like, we on Tuesdays, obviously going more casual, wanting to discuss more of the heart of why we do what we do, and the execution of it. How do we get better? How do we improve? How do we reach others? What are some things that we can learn from each other? And so, really, glad to have you on, and I'm glad to be talking today a little bit about how to reach others through digital ministry.
Absolutely.
It's great. Yeah, excited to be with you. Hope I can add a little bit of value to you guys and your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man. So yeah, let's just kick it off. And, why don't you tell the folks that are watching a little bit about you and what you do at Mission Church?
Sure. Yeah. So, we are in Chicagoland, which we determined before the show started.
Yeah.
No other city has a land.
Yeah.
There's no Dallas land or Detroit land, just
Right.
Chicagoland.
Yeah.
So we're in Chicagoland. I like to say, if the lakefront is the east and like the cornfield is the west, that's Chicagoland. We are like right in the middle of the metropolitan of Chicagoland. This is actually my hometown. My grandparents moved here in the 40s. And so my best friend and I, 10 years ago, started Mission Church. This is a place, it's 10 towns. We call it the 10, 262,000 people. It's the size of Orlando. And in 10 years, we're the only new church that's been here in that big of an area. So it's a place starved for the gospel. It's just been an honor and a privilege to do this with my best friend, with people like Daniel. Daniel was with us for 7 years. Was such a joy to work with. But yeah, our mission's helping people find and follow Christ, and our vision is a movement of Jesus in the 10 in our lifetime. So 10 years in, obviously, like everybody, we've had some challenges the last couple years, but it's a joy to do church in your hometown, and to have hopefully a legacy impact in our lifetime.
That's awesome.
It's cool.
That's awesome.
Well, I've never been to Mission. I want to go sometime, but
It's
it's
a paradise.
everything that Daniel tells me.
There's waterfalls and, there's none of that stuff.
All of the doves flying around. It's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. I love what you guys do. I love your strategy and your vision and everything that I see, especially from a digital perspective. Obviously, that's the part that I engage with. And that's the part, obviously, that's grown significantly in the past year. And I know was part of Daniel. That was like one of the last, you were like right in the thick of it, right as Resi.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I really want to make sure that's clear to the folks that are watching is, Mission's vision of this geographical footprint. Can you expand on that a little bit so that we can get kind of set the stage and set the foundation for how digital ministry plays a part in that grander scheme? Because I think what's really cool is this idea of vision achievement. And, if you're a church of any number of people, hopefully you have this, guiding vision, and we really want to try to make sure that we can achieve that. But then how does, the outworkings are so unique, I feel like, at Mission. So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I just want to say it's really funny to hear you use all my language in a different place now. So proud dad moment.
There you go.
Yeah, no, but you ask a really good question, because I think everyone needs to view their online strategy through the context they're trying to reach. So, we all know the churches that have a global scale and they treat their online for that audience, and they should. Well, we don't have that vision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we think if you want to reach people all over the world through online, like Life Church is the jam. Like they probably do it better than anybody. And that's just not the game we're in. And so we've got this geographic footprint. And yeah, people from outside of that tune in and we think that's great, but we are targeting everything that we do for the neighborhoods that God has placed our people in. And so that affects, Daniel, to your point, that affects how we do it and why we do it. If our reach was like, we want to grab as many people as we can anywhere, we would be doing something totally different than what we're doing. And so I think everybody needs to think about who has God called you to reach, and your online strategy should be uniquely formatted to reach those people, not to do what the church down the street's doing. So I think that's really important in your online strategy.
So when did you guys first develop this online strategy? What was the process for that? Was it pre-COVID I imagine it shifted some during COVID.
Yeah, so when we were portable, I'll never forget, like 2015, Daniel got this little, I think it was called a Wemo camera? Or?
Mevo.
Mevo,
yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is still in your house somewhere.
Yeah, it's in my garage. It's probably like out of date now.
Yeah,
but
totally.
He just plugged this thing in, and we're broadcasting the Facebook Live. Honestly, obviously Church Online was the thing, but the Facebook Live thing, no one was really doing that back then. And we did it, and it was basically, we wanted our friends and neighbors as they were scrolling through Facebook to stumble upon what we were doing, because they weren't walking through our doors, but if we can give them a glimpse. Well, then we moved into our building, and we grew, and we found that our online audience was both starting from the couch, but then staying on the couch. No one was looking into the camera and saying like, hey, we're so glad you're with us, come join us. There was like this tremendous amount of permission to just stay exactly where you were at as a viewer. Mm-hmm. And it was actually before COVID hit, when Daniel was on our team. We were making the shift back in 2019. We were beginning to plan to make the shift. We were going to gear Church Online 100% towards guests. And we called it our couch to chair vision. So Church Online was going to be retooled to where we wanted to move you from your couch to your chair. And then, of course, as we were literally weeks away from that strategy, hit and play, COVID hit.
Wow.
Well, now you can't do that anymore because you can't have a guest come to the building because the building's closed. And so then we started using Resi. We invested in equipment and broadcasting, and we really poured all these investments into Church Online. And where we're at today is we've been already open for a year this month, reopened. And we gave Church Online in its fullest. And when I say Church Online, like you get the full experience. You get a host, you get the worship, you get another host, you get the full message. Our mission's helping people find and follow Christ. And we just didn't see people finding and following Christ online. It was happening here at the building. And so we're moving back, and we just launched it last Sunday. We're moving forward that strategy of, I like to say, our presence online isn't changing, but our purpose is. So Church Online, as we know it at Mission Church, has been buried, and it's in the grave, and there's no plans of it resurrecting. And we now have Church Online that's geared completely towards guests. So that was kind of the journey to get there.
That's awesome. And I love, go ahead.
One quick thing to say, Daniel, is had we experienced people coming to faith like they were at the building, we would have kept the Church Online format. So like, we're not anti show your church service online. In our context, which I said earlier, it just wasn't fulfilling the mission of our church. So, and we poured a lot of money and staff and volunteers into it. So we just pulled the plug on how we were doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's why I wanted to kind of set the stage on, what the actual mission and vision is at Mission Church, because like you said, that informs everything going forward. And so like from my chair, I didn't hear, we hate Church Online. I heard, hey, here's how Church Online works in our context and what we're trying to do. And so, kudos to you guys for, recognizing that and plowing ahead, pioneering in a way.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind, I'm not the main teaching pastor. I do occasionally, but I like to say things out loud that everybody's thinking. There's pastors who, like, when you're done on Sunday, you like to know that thing you just gave is available for everybody to see. And while we post an archive a day later, it's like you get the person, whether it's the worship leader or the teaching pastor, like, you have to humble yourself to the mission and vision God's called you to, and even come to grips with, like, yeah, we don't have this far-reaching online presence. I might not become this celebrity pastor because everything we're doing online is geared to help people find and follow Christ here locally. And so I just see a lot of guys holding on to old ways for reasons that don't have to do with mission and vision. So just wanted to say that for people to just really think through and take to heart.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so you talked about, your presence not changing, but your purpose changing online. What does that look like practically? You said you guys launched it just last week or so?
Yeah, just last Sunday, and we're already, tweaking and updating it and learning.
That's awesome.
So if you think through, every church has, like, they probably call it like a pathway. So, like, from the moment someone hears about your church to, like, the be-all, end-all, they're doing everything we want them to do. Everybody knows what that is. Well, a lot of people try to take church online and say, how can we get people to do all of this via church online? And all we're saying is, we just want people to do this, church online. And then when they come to the building and actually are in community with people, we're going to take them further. There's a lot of people that believe community can be built online. Maybe it can. We have not seen that happen for us. And so we're just trying to move people from viewing church at home to being a guest at the building. And we all know that after being a guest at the building, there's so much more for you to grow into in your faith, in your partnership with the church. In our case, too, we send people out to be local missionaries. So we're done trying to do that all online. We're just trying to get them to do this much online, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people that, weren't tuned in last week to see kind of like what that looks like as an online experience, can you walk us through what that online experience now looks like? Because I think in our minds we just think, okay, like, maybe even you get fancy with a pre-show host, and then you cut into worship, and then you just let the cameras roll until the pastor says amen. What does it look like on the screen for someone in your context?
Yeah, it's good. So it clocked in at about 17 minutes was the total experience. There's a host. And one thing we're changing immediately is we're going to have more activity, and we're going to actually film it live on a Sunday. Nice. So people can feel that, oh my gosh, there's people at the building. So there's going to be a quick host, and they're going to introduce, and they do introduce right off the bat, here's our one hope for you. Our hope for you today is that you will move from being a viewer at home to a guest at the building. So we try to tell our viewer right away what it is, what it isn't, and what our hope is for you. And so she throws them into worship, which is actually pre-recorded but feels live. Like, you feel like you're moving into the room. And then there's a quick video from me, and I give some of the vision that I'm talking about now of how I really want them to join us in redefining what church is and what church could be. That's a statement we have around here. And I remind them, I kind of double down on that vision. Like, hey, it's great that church started from your couch, but it can't stay from your couch, and how the Bible talks about us not neglecting gathering together. And then the host throws, or we film the host from Guest Central, and we say, hey, this is where we want you to end up. Come to this booth, so to speak, meet our connections pastor. And then she throws it to the teaching pastor, who's usually John, who I co-lead this with. And you sit down and you watch, and you assume you're going to get the full message, and you get about half of the first point, and you get pulled immediately out with basically a, hey, come join us next week to hear week 2 or week 3 or week 4 of this series. And it clocks in, like I said, at about 17 minutes. So we call it First Look. It's basically a taste of, or a preview of what you would experience here at church. The other thing we're going to add is help them see what we have for their kids and students as well. Since, as you know, Daniel, in our demographic, there's a lot of young families.
Tons of young families.
So that's kind of a snapshot of it.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously this, kind of like new purpose is only a week old. So there's not, a ton of data in terms of like how that's affecting or moving the needle in terms of vision achievement. But can you talk to us a little bit about just missions view? And I know you've touched on this a little bit, but what do you do when, like, what happens when someone makes that move from a couch to walking through missions front door? What does that assimilation process now look like? You know, in our current reality of a lot of people at least watching online, and you have, I was there when we would hear those stories of people saying, yeah, I've been watching for months and I finally got up the courage to walk through the front doors because I felt like that was the next thing I should do. What does that next process look like, and how do you receive those people from online?
Yeah, that's good, man. Great question. So yeah, Daniel, you would know this, but on that online experience that we've created, we're very clear with them that we have one hope for them, and it's just to come here and be a guest. And then when they sit there in the service, when the host gets up on stage live and in person, we're only talking to that guest. So John Doe, who's been at our church for 8 years, that moment's not for him. Like, he's good. He knows what to do. He's not going anywhere. So we're assuming we're talking to just a room full of guests that came from online, and we're telling them, here's the one hope we have for you today. You're a guest, go to Guest Central. If they make that step, they're very likely then to get connected onto a volunteer team, which makes them essentially feel part of the church. And so we do these things that we call tours. They're not rocket science, and our building's not very big. But if you go to Guest Central, you stick around and you take a tour. The tour is not about the building. It's more so about what's on the walls of our building. And what we've done at our building is our mission, our vision, our DNA is like all over the walls. And so we take people around a tour and we talk about, hey, here's our 3 values. Hey, here's the vision of our church in the next 5 years. Here's a map of the 10. Here's what our missional communities look like. And we have seen over the summer, I think it came out to 91% of the guests that went to Guest Central stuck around and took a tour. And so I think the key for assimilation is just give people one option at a time. So often we're like, here's the menu of things to do at our church. And like, people are overwhelmed already just coming into your church. Just tell them one thing you want them to do. And when they go to that one thing, tell them the next one thing that they should do. And so we try to eliminate choices, because following Jesus is like this, but life in the local church is actually pretty, we know what works and what doesn't work. And so don't overcomplicate things for people. So those are our kind of initial steps. We feel like if we get them on a volunteer team, now they're in the hands of the director and they're connected to our church, and they've moved from the couch to now they're actually contributing, and they're really a partner of our local church.
Plus they get a pretty sweet coffee mug.
They do. Probably designed by you.
I think it was.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So one thing that I want to cover kind of before we wrap this up is I know from my time in the church, and I've heard you talk about it in the past, so often we can look at the church down the road, or even folks that are watching today, they can look at Mission Church and say, oh my gosh, we need to do that. And it's like, hey, let's just graft what's happening, say at Mission, and put it into our church. And a lot of times that actually doesn't work. And so I'd love for you to maybe just touch on this idea of, if you see a great idea that's working for another church, what's the most important thing to focus on before trying to implement a new strategy or something else inside of your church? Does that make sense?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, boring answer, but I think it's the right answer, which is we all know we're supposed to come back to vision and let that be the guide, and we just neglect to do that. And so, Daniel, you were here for really the first 5 years and the second 5 years, a good chunk of both. And there was a season of our church where we weren't disciplined to come back to vision. Mm-hmm. And so we tried a lot of things. We had a lot of failures. We had some successes too. And then in 2017, a shift happened, And we got really disciplined in stopping to ask the question, regardless of what anybody's doing down the street or any idea that any one of us had. Does that help us get to vision faster and more efficiently? You mentioned vision achievement. That's something we talk about.
Yep.
And so our yeses and our nos, our additions and our eliminations, like we got rid of small groups, which I know is like crazy. We got rid of small groups 5 years ago. Why? Because we knew it would get us to our vision quicker. And so I do think that the American church probably only needs one really good church to share the gospel doing church online, right? Like I share Life Church and Elevation Church, and I share their messages with people all the time because they do a great job of it. I think if you're a neighborhood church and you have a church that's in a neighborhood or a region, I tend to think you should relook at church online and leverage it to help people get in close proximity with you. I just believe in the theology of that. But I do, to answer your question directly, like I think we can get ideas and nudges from what churches are doing, but we have to always come back to like, what is our vision? Does this decision to do this or not do this speed up the process between today and our vision actually being achieved? And I know that's not a sexy answer. It just works. And I think we just neglect to ask that question. And not just churches, all organizations.
Yeah.
Very, very distracted.
Sure.
So
It's interesting. It's cool. I really like that you guys aren't afraid to pull back to that vision, because I think there is a lot of fear in that, even just in the way that church works, and the way that we do church. And I think for so long, I mean, this is, one question I'd love to ask you, Tommy, is where do you see kind of things headed next for the local church? What are some of the things that churches should be focused on? Is it this same 35-minute 4-song worship set plus 20-some minutes of preaching every week? Is it small groups? What does church look like in the next few years following the changes that have happened?
Yeah, that's great. So, if you were to like see my inbox or, the podcast that, I listen to of church leaders and pastors, like everybody is doubling down on church online because of the last 18 months. And so, even like I won't name names, but even like church planting conferences are shifting their whole thing to how do we help churches like hammer down even more on church online. I'm personally worried about that. Like we did that the last 18 months and we're backing out of that. And like I said, it comes back to the local context. We didn't see our mission fulfilled there. And I think if you look at some of the data and the numbers that even like Barna put out, like church online has been plummeting since July of last year, and it hasn't seen an uptick. And we're seeing this when people walk in the doors of our church, whether they're Christian, not Christian, and when the Holy Spirit is present there, like you can't compare that to church online. And so I don't know. I'd love to have an answer. I don't know what's to come, but I can feel the church really throttling down on church online, and it has me worried. I think and we're a missional church, so we put appropriate weight on the gathering, and we want people to actually go and be the church. But I have actually really felt God not even whisper, but shout how important the gathering is for the local church and the individuals within the local church. And so I'm hoping that COVID and lockdowns actually creates a resurgence of the importance of the gathering. And then also, okay, but then how do we leverage the online? I said it at the beginning. We shouldn't disappear from online. Our presence needs to be there because that's where people are increasingly at. Just the purpose for why we're there has to be really looked at and stewarded well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that presence and purpose. I mean, you are a pastor, so alliteration,
man.
I mean, you just can't help it. You can't help it. Well, that's awesome, man. And my hope from today's live is that anyone that's watching is at least starts asking those questions, like, what is our purpose online? Because I think that, so often, especially with COVID, a lot of churches were probably in the boat of, we just need to get online. Like, we need to get online. Yeah. That's kind of like our reality. And now, they kind of have this opportunity. And Nate and I, we've talked to so many churches that are in that boat of like, okay, we're online now. Now what do we do?
Yeah.
Like, we got through what we needed to get through,
right.
and now what do we do with it? And I think asking that question, like, what is the purpose? And, for whatever context that church is in, that's going to look different. And I think that that's really cool, to encourage that question to be asked. And yeah, go ahead.
I would reinforce what you're saying. I think you're nailing it. And you've been in those meetings. It's a 10-minute meeting. Like, it won't take long to just say, hey, get the right people in the room and just say, okay, we've got this thing. We worked really hard to get online. Let's just call time out and ask the question, what's the purpose? And you're going to get the answer in minutes. And I think the shift won't be as difficult as you think. I think the barrier is it's the same as when we pulled away from doing small groups. There was a fear like, what will other churches think? What will our people think? Everybody does small groups. We have to go through that same thing now with church online and just get over some of the fears. And we had 0 comments, 0 emails from people after week 1. No one was like, where's my church online? So I think we just need to get over some fears. As you said, get the right people in the room, ask the question. You'll get to your answer within 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So last question.
Okay.
Is there anything we didn't ask you, or something that you were like, man, I really wish that we could, talk about this? So consider it the last 10%.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the only thing that's coming to mind is, I think, well, yeah, it was right before COVID hit. We were really taking a look at our church app and asking the same questions. And so it wasn't helping or fulfilling our mission. And so we basically made it disappear. And we spent a lot of time, and we've been leveraging it. And we said, we're not bringing it back until someone can open it and they can have a unique experience and they know exactly what their next step is. And we worked with a company out of Phoenix to help us do this. They're brand new. We were one of their first clients. And so we just relaunched the app too, which you were a part of the early conversations.
Yeah, I remember that.
The COVID put a year lockdown, a delay on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been exciting. And I think if churches can look at, like a lot of people, Daniel, they have an app and it's basically a version of their website, but
right.
It's just got an icon.
Right.
It's like, well, you could just send people to your website. It's the same exact info. So if people pull their phone out of their pocket, I want them to do it because it's a unique experience to them. So we got a lot of fine tuning, but that's exciting. And I think there's some opportunity there in the digital space of creating unique experiences for people within the church, helping them take their unique step instead of telling everybody to do the same exact thing. So that's something I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
Sounds like we'll have to have you on again to talk about that a little more in depth.
Yeah. Let us get a few more weeks and months under our belt.
So next week then, right? Sounds good.
Yeah, totally.
Tommy, I love how vision focused y'all are as an organization and everything that you do, and that really shows through. I mean, I think even for your online as so much, even as your physical space, everything is driven by the vision and the purpose, and that's really good. That's something that I think a lot of churches have these little additions or these ministries or these efforts that they do because it's like, well, we should be doing these things because the church down the road is doing these things or whatever. But everything, even the small details, comes back to vision, and I think that's really shows through with everything that you have discussed.
Yeah,
thanks.
I feel like
that's
the
great.
phrase from today is, "Don't get distracted." Like focus on vision.
Yeah,
and that'll kind of lead you straight.
totally.
All
Which
right.
is funny because my camera went out of focus.
I saw that. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right. That's all the time we have. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Tommy, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Even just for me to get to hang out with you again. Did my heart good. Awesome. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.